I'd been standing at the back of the ballroom for 20 minutes when she finally took the stage. The Grandview Hotel, downtown. 200 guests in suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Waiters circulating with champagne I knew she'd insisted on. The expensive French kind her father always ordered. My wife looked perfect up there under the lights. Hairstyled in that way she'd copied from some executive she admired. The dress was new. I'd seen the charge 2 weeks ago. For $1,000. For one night. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice carrying that polished tone she'd developed after Oxford. "Tonight celebrates more than just closing the Meridian deal. It represents a commitment to excellence, to standards, to maintaining the integrity of what we build." I watched her father nodding from his table near the front. 3 of his banking partners sat with him, the kind of men who measured success by the club you belong to and the name on your degree. She continued, "Success requires difficult decisions. It requires us to cut away what doesn't serve our goals." Her eyes found me in the back. "Just for a second. Some of you know my husband runs a small tech operation. What you might not know is how much that enterprise has struggled, how much it's cost us, frankly, in resources and reputation." The room got quieter. A few people turned to look at me. "My father and I have made a decision," she said. "To protect our family's financial position and our name in this community, we're taking control of that struggling operation. We'll be transferring its assets to the Bernard Family Investment Fund, where proper management can either salvage what's there or close it with dignity." Applause started. Not loud, but enough. Supportive. Like they were watching her make a smart business call. "It's the responsible thing to do," she added. "Sometimes love means making the hard choices for someone who can't make them himself." More applause. Her father stood up, raising his glass. Others followed. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just set my untouched champagne glass down on the sound technician's table next to me and walked toward the side exit. My footsteps didn't echo. Nobody noticed me leaving except the woman checking coats, who looked confused when I asked for mine. "Already going?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Already done." The December air outside hit cold and clean. I got in my truck, 15 years old, the same one I'd been driving since before we met, and started the engine. My phone buzzed before I'd even left the parking garage. A text from her. "Where did you go? People are asking about you." I didn't answer. I drove back to my office in the industrial district, the place she'd always called that warehouse you're attached to. The building sat dark and quiet. I unlocked the front door and went straight to my desk. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, she'd show up here with her father and their lawyers. They'd bring documents. They'd expect me to sign. They'd expect me to be grateful she was helping me out of my failure. I pulled up the file I'd been working on for 6 months. Project Nightingale. Federal contract, classified clearance, implementation scheduled for January. The system that made her Meridian deal technically possible. My phone buzzed again. Another text. Then another. Then a call. I let it ring until it stopped. I had 16 hours to make sure everything was documented exactly right. 16 hours before they walked in here expecting to take over something they didn't understand. I opened my laptop and started typing. No anger, no emotion, just data. Line after line of technical specifications, contract clauses, security clearances, and federal compliance requirements. By midnight, I had everything I needed printed and organized in 3 separate folders. One for me, one for my attorney, one for the federal liaison officer who'd be here tomorrow morning before they arrived. My phone had 32 missed calls by then. I powered it off and lay down on the couch in my office. Not because I was tired, because I wanted to be here when the sun came up. When they arrived tomorrow, they wouldn't find a defeated man ready to hand over his failure. They'd find out exactly what they tried to take. The coffee maker in my office had been running since 5 in the morning. I'd watched the sun come up through the industrial windows, those old factory-style panes that she'd always said made the place look depressing. I wasn't depressed. I was awake. My phone stayed off. I knew what was on it without looking. Messages from her, probably escalating from confused to angry to concerned. Maybe a few from her father. Definitely some from her mother, who'd always been polite to my face while suggesting to her daughter that she'd married down. 7:30. The federal liaison officer arrived first. Agent Harrison Blanchard, mid-40s, the kind of guy who wore a suit but still looked like he could run 5 miles without breaking a sweat. We'd worked together for 8 months on Project Nightingale. "You sure about this?" he asked, looking at the folders I'd prepared. They're coming here to take control of the company, I said. That triggers the change of control clause in our federal contract. It does, he agreed. Which means everything gets flagged for security review. Which means the Meridian deal your wife just signed loses its technical certification. That's correct. He studied me for a minute. This is going to get ugly. It already got ugly, I said. Last night at the Grandview Hotel, when she announced to 200 people that I'm a failure who needs to be rescued. Fair enough. He sat down and opened his briefcase. You want me visible or in the back office? Visible, I said. I want them to see exactly what they're walking into. At 7:55, 3 cars pulled up outside. I watched through the window. Her silver luxury sedan, the one she'd bought herself after her last promotion. Her father's black vehicle with the personalized plates. And a third car I didn't recognize, probably the attorney's. She got out first. Even from up here I could see she was dressed for business, not conversation. Power suit, the navy one. Hair pulled back. She had her tablet under one arm and her phone in the other hand. Her father emerged next, followed by 3 men in expensive suits carrying briefcases. The legal team. They'd come prepared to make this official. They walked to the front door. I heard them try it, find it locked, then knock. Professional. Controlled. Like they were here for a scheduled meeting. I took my time walking down the stairs. Let them knock twice more. When I finally opened the door, she had her corporate smile ready. There you are, she said. We tried calling. I know. I held the door open. Come in. They filed past me into the lobby. That's when they saw Agent Blanchard sitting in one of the chairs, federal ID badge visible on his belt. And behind him, through the glass partition to the main office, 2 more men in suits who very clearly weren't my employees. Her smile faded. What's going on? Business, I said. You wanted to discuss the transfer of assets, right? Her father stepped forward. We have the documentation prepared. This doesn't need to be complicated. You sign, we take over operations, and you're freed from the burden of trying to maintain this operation. Freed from the burden, I repeated. That's an interesting way to put it. One of the attorneys opened his briefcase. We've been very generous with the terms. You'll retain a small consulting fee for the first year during transition. A consulting fee. I nodded slowly. For my own company. Your struggling company, her father corrected. Let's be honest about what this is. You've been bleeding money for 2 years. My daughter has been covering your losses out of her salary. This is us stopping the damage before it gets worse. Agent Blanchard stood up. Mr. Bernard, I'm going to need to interrupt this conversation. Her father looked at him with the kind of dismissive glance he usually reserved for service workers. And you are? Federal Liaison Officer for Project Nightingale. Blanchard held up his credentials, which is the classified infrastructure contract that this facility has been developing for the Department of Defense for the past 8 months. The room got very quiet. My wife turned to me. What is he talking about? The work I've been doing, I said. The work you called a struggling operation last night. You said you were debugging network systems, she said. I was. Federal network systems. The same systems that provide the security infrastructure for corporate deals like the one you signed yesterday. Her face went pale. Not dramatically, just enough that I could tell she was starting to understand. The Meridian deal, she said quietly, uses my security protocols, I confirmed. Which means when you and your father tried to force a change of control over this company, you triggered a federal review of all active contracts, including the certifications that make your deal technically valid. One of the attorneys spoke up. That's not possible. We haven't signed anything yet. You announced your intention publicly, Blanchard said. At the Grandview Hotel, in front of 200 witnesses. That's enough to flag the contract for review under hostile acquisition protocols. Her father's face had gone from dismissive to something close to panic. This is absurd. We're family. This isn't hostile. You called his operation struggling and announced you were taking it over to protect your family name, I said. How would you describe that? Nobody answered. Here's what happens next, I continued. Agent Blanchard files his report. The Federal Review Board examines the situation. And while they're doing that, all security certifications issued to contracts using my infrastructure get suspended pending investigation. How long does that take? Her father asked. 6 to 8 months, Blanchard said. Minimum. My wife sat down in one of the lobby chairs. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She just looked lost. You knew, she said. Last night when I made that speech, you knew this would happen. I knew you didn't bother to ask what I actually do here, I said. I knew you assumed failure because my office doesn't have marble floors and my degree isn't from Oxford. We can fix this, her father said quickly. We'll retract the statement. Say it was a misunderstanding. Too late, Blanchard said. The flag is already in the system. I watched them process it. The attorneys were already whispering to each other, probably calculating liability. Her father had his phone out, probably trying to figure out who to call. And my wife just sat there, staring at me like she was seeing someone she'd never met before. You should go, I said. I have work to do. They didn't leave right away. Her father spent 10 minutes on his phone in the parking lot, his voice getting louder each time someone apparently told him there was nothing they could do. The attorneys huddled by their car, probably already drafting bills for a consultation that had just become exponentially more complicated. My wife came back inside alone. Can we talk? She asked. Without the federal agent watching, I nodded to Blanchard, who stepped into the back office. But I didn't offer her a chair, didn't offer coffee, just stood there waiting. I didn't know, she said, about the federal contract, about any of it. You didn't ask. You never told me. I tried, I said. Last April when the contract came through. You were on your phone during dinner, responding to emails from your father about some portfolio restructure. I mentioned I'd gotten a government project. You said, that's nice, without looking up. She opened her mouth, then closed it, started to speak again, then stopped. 3 other times after that, I continued. Once at your mother's birthday dinner when your cousin asked what I did. You answered for me, said I fixed computer problems for small businesses. I tried to correct you, but your father interrupted with a story about his golf game. I don't remember that. I know you don't. That's the point. She sat down on the bench near the window, the one I'd built myself from reclaimed wood because I couldn't afford new furniture when I started this place. She'd always hated that bench, said it looked unprofessional. What happens now? She asked. To you or to me? To us. I almost laughed. Almost. There is no us. You made that clear last night when you announced you were taking over my company to protect your family name from the embarrassment of being associated with me. I was trying to help. No, you were trying to fix what you saw as a problem. Except I wasn't the problem. Your assumption was. My father said you were losing money. I was in a non-disclosure period. No revenue, no expenses I could discuss. That's standard for classified work. If you'd asked me directly instead of having your father's accountant analyze our joint finances, I would have explained that. She stared at her hands. The Meridian deal. How bad is it? Your deal requires secure data infrastructure certified for financial transactions over 50 million. My system provides that certification. Without it, the deal can't close. Can't someone else provide it? Not in 6 months. Maybe not in a year. The certification process alone takes 8 months minimum, and that's if you know what you're doing. So the deal is dead. Unless the federal review clears everything and I choose to maintain the contract relationship with your father's firm. Her head snapped up. Choose to. I'm not obligated to work with anyone who demonstrates hostile intent toward my operation. That's in my service agreement. Standard protection clause. This was a misunderstanding. This was a public announcement of intent to acquire. Your father's attorneys drafted documents. You brought them here this morning to make it official. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a coordinated action. The door opened. Her father walked in, phone still in his hand. He looked at me the way you'd look at an opponent across a negotiation table. I spoke with Senator McKay, he said. He assures me this federal review can be expedited with the right conversations. Senator McKay doesn't have clearance for Project Nightingale, I said. And attempting to pressure a federal security review through political channels is the fastest way to turn a 6-month investigation into a 2-year one. His jaw tightened. You're making this personal. I'm making this accurate. You came here to take something that doesn't belong to you. Now you're upset that there are consequences. We're family. We were family when you told everyone at the country club that your daughter married a dropout who couldn't hold a proper job. We were family when your wife suggested I'd be happier working in IT support at your bank. We were family every time you introduced me as the one who does something with computers. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I built this company from nothing. I continued. Taught myself everything because I couldn't afford the schools you take for granted. Spent 5 years being polite while you treated me like hired help at family dinners. And the first time I have something valuable, something that matters, You decide it's yours to manage because clearly I'm too incompetent to handle it myself. That's not what this was. That's exactly what this was. You just didn't expect me to have any recourse. My wife stood up. What do you want? Money? A percentage of the deal? Name your price. I don't want your money. Then what? I looked at both of them. Father and daughter. Same expression. Same assumption that everything had a price. Every problem had a solution you could buy. I want you to leave my building, I said. I want you to take your attorneys and your assumptions and your Oxford superiority complex and get out. Be reasonable, her father started. I am being reasonable. Reasonable would be filing a defamation suit for what she said about me last night. Reasonable would be reporting your attempted acquisition to every business journal in the city. I'm being generous by simply telling you to leave. Agent Blanchard appeared in the doorway. Mr. Bernard, I need you to clear the premises. This is a secure facility and your presence is no longer authorized. Her father's face went red. This is absurd. I'm calling my attorney. You do that, I said. From outside. They left. All of them. The attorneys. Her father. And finally, after one long look at me that I couldn't quite read, my wife. When the door closed, Blanchard let out a low whistle. That was something. That was overdue. I corrected. My phone, still powered off on my desk, probably had another 50 messages by now. I didn't turn it on. Instead, I pulled up the project files for Nightingale and got back to work. Whatever happened next with the review board, with her career, with our marriage, none of it would change one basic fact. I'd built something that mattered, and I'd done it without anyone's permission or approval. That was enough. The next 3 days were quiet in a way that felt deliberate. No calls from her. No visits from her father. Just silence, which told me they were regrouping, consulting with people who knew more than they did about federal contracts and security clearances. I spent those days finishing the implementation timeline for Nightingale. The work was good. Clean code, efficient protocols, the kind of system that would run for years without major maintenance. It was the opposite of rushed or sloppy, the opposite of everything her father had assumed about my operation. On Thursday afternoon, someone knocked on the front door. Not the aggressive knock from earlier in the week. This one was hesitant, almost apologetic. I checked the security camera feed. A woman in her 50s, business casual, carrying a leather portfolio. I didn't recognize her. When I opened the door, she smiled professionally. Mr. Kemp, I'm Juliet Spencer. I represent the Meridian Group, the company at the center of the deal your wife mediated. I know who Meridian is. May I come in? I stepped aside. She walked past me into the lobby, looked around at the industrial space with the kind of assessment that wasn't judgmental, just observant. Interesting setup, she said. Not what I expected. Most people say that. She set her portfolio on the bench. I'll be direct. The Meridian deal is worth $300 million. Without your security certification, it can't proceed. My company stands to lose approximately $18 million in projected revenue if this falls through. That's unfortunate. It is, particularly because none of this was our fault. We did our due diligence. We verified all technical requirements. We hired the Bernard Group specifically because they assured us they had relationships with the necessary infrastructure providers. They assumed they did. Yes, well. She pulled out a tablet. Assumptions are expensive. I've spent the last 2 days learning everything I can about your company and your work. Project Nightingale is impressive. The protocol architecture is beyond what most firms could develop, even with 10 times your resources. Thank you. Which makes me wonder why you're operating out of an industrial building in this neighborhood instead of a corporate campus somewhere with venture capital funding. Because venture capital comes with expectations, I said, and board members, and people who think they know better than you how to run your own company. She smiled at that. Genuine, not corporate. Fair enough. So here's my question. What would it take for you to maintain the security certification for our deal? That depends on whether your company is willing to work directly with me instead of through the Bernard Group. She closed her tablet. You want to cut them out. I want to establish a professional relationship with the actual client, instead of being a subcontractor nobody bothers to inform about anything. The Bernard Group won't like that. The Bernard Group tried to take over my company. I don't particularly care what they like. She considered this for a moment. You'd need to provide the same service level. Better, I said. You'd have direct access to me. No intermediary. No communication delays. If there's a technical issue at 2 in the morning, you call me, not them, not their account manager. You get the person who actually built the system. What's your rate? I named a number. It was triple what I'd been charging through the Bernard Group arrangement. She didn't flinch. That's steep. That's what my work is worth. The Bernard Group was taking 70% as a finder's fee for a relationship they didn't maintain and expertise they didn't have. And if we agree to these terms, I file an amendment to my federal contract showing Meridian as a direct client. The Security Review Board sees that the business relationship is stable and legitimate. Your certification gets restored within 2 weeks instead of 6 months. She stood up, offered her hand. I'll need to present this to our board, but I don't anticipate any issues. We've already lost 3 weeks of implementation time. We can't afford to lose more. We shook. Her grip was firm, confident. The kind of handshake from someone who closed deals without needing to announce them at hotel parties. One more thing, she said at the door. Your wife? She's going to have questions about this arrangement. My wife doesn't work for your company. She mediated the deal. Technically, she's still the relationship manager on paper. Then you'll need to update your paperwork. As of this morning, I filed for legal separation. She's no longer authorized to make business decisions that affect my contracts. Juliet nodded slowly. That's going to complicate things for the Bernard Group. That's not my problem. After she left, I sat down at my desk and opened my email. 43 unread messages, most from my wife, escalating from confused to angry to desperate. A few from her father, all with subject lines like, "We need to talk," and "urgent," "partnership discussion." I deleted them without reading. Instead, I opened a new message to my attorney. Subject line, "Separation agreement, draft needed." I'd been putting this off for 6 months, maybe longer, telling myself it might get better, that she might eventually see me as something other than the project that didn't pan out the way she'd hoped. The conversation in my office this week had made one thing clear. She didn't see me at all. She saw an embarrassment, a liability, someone whose main value was staying quiet while she built her career on top of infrastructure she didn't understand or respect. I finished the email and sent it. My phone rang. Her number. I watched it ring 4 times before it went to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. On the 5th call, I answered. "We need to talk," she said. No greeting. No preamble. "No, we don't. Juliet Spencer just left your office. She's proposing a direct contract that cuts out my firm entirely." Good. She's smart. This is my deal. I spent 8 months putting it together. And you spent 5 years ignoring what made it technically possible. You don't get credit for both. You're destroying my career out of spite. I'm running my business. If that happens to conflict with your assumptions about how things should work, that's not spite. That's consequences. Silence on the other end. Then, quieter. "I never meant to hurt you. You meant to fix me. That's worse. What do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I should have asked more questions about your work. I should have defended you to my father. Is that what you need to hear? I don't need anything from you. That's the part you're not understanding. I built this without your help. I'll keep building it without your approval. The only reason we're having this conversation is because you finally noticed I'm not the failure you announced I was. So that's it. 5 years of marriage and you're just done. I was done when you stood on that stage and told 200 people I was a burden you needed to manage. This is just making it official." I hung up before she could respond. Agent Blanchard walked in from the back office. That sounded final. It was, "You doing okay?" "I'm doing exactly what I should have done months ago," I said, trusting myself instead of waiting for permission. He nodded, grabbed his jacket. "For what it's worth, that security protocol you designed. It's the best work I've seen in 15 years of federal contracting. You didn't need Oxford for that. You just needed to give yourself credit." After he left, I turned my phone off again and went back to work. The building was quiet. Just me and the hum of servers in the back room and the satisfaction of knowing that tomorrow, Meridian would approve the direct contract. And the day after that, I'd sign separation papers. And the day after that, I'd keep building what I'd always been building. Something that mattered. On my terms. Without apology. 2 weeks after the Meridian contract went through, her father showed up at my office alone. No attorneys this time. No coordinated strategy. Just him, looking older than I remembered, walking through my door at 6 in the evening when most people were heading home. I didn't make him wait. Didn't play games. Just gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Coffee." I asked. No, thank you. He sat down slowly, like the weight of the conversation ahead was already pressing on him. I came to ask what it would take to restore the business relationship between your company and the Bernard Group. There isn't one to restore. There never was. You hired me as a subcontractor and treated me like an afterthought. We paid you fairly. You paid me 30% of what you charged Meridian for my work. That's not fair. That's exploitation with paperwork. He shifted in his chair. Standard industry markup. For services you provided. You didn't provide anything except an introduction you now wish you'd never made. The Meridian deal was built on relationships I spent 30 years developing. And it required technical infrastructure you spent 30 seconds understanding. Relationships don't certify security protocols. Code does. My code. He was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone and set it on the desk between us. I have 6 other clients with deals pending that require similar certifications. If we can't provide them, those deals collapse. That's over $400 million in contracts. Sounds like a significant problem. It is. For both of us. You could be the solution. I am the solution. I'm just not your solution anymore. Name your terms. Whatever arrangement you made with Meridian, I'll match it. Better than match it. You'd have access to our entire client base, our resources, our reputation. Your reputation. I leaned back. The one where I'm the struggling operation that needed to be taken over for its own good? His face tightened. That was a mistake. That was your daughter's public assessment of my worth. At an event you organized. In front of people you do business with. And you didn't correct her. You stood up and toasted her business instincts. She was trying to help. She was trying to impress you. There's a difference. And you were happy to let her throw me under the bus if it meant consolidating another asset into your portfolio. He picked up his phone, looked at it, set it back down. What happened to you? You used to be reasonable. Accommodating. I used to think accommodation was the same as respect. Then I spent 5 years watching you treat me like furniture at family dinners while you discussed business I was never invited to participate in. Turns out, I was just waiting for you to need me enough to notice I'd stopped accommodating. This isn't about ego. You're right. It's about competence. Mine. Which you never bothered to assess because I didn't graduate from the right schools or work at the right firms. I taught myself everything I know, which in your world meant I didn't know anything worth knowing. He stood up abruptly. Fine. You've made your point. You're angry. You're justified. I understand. But this vindictive approach isn't professional. Vindictive would be calling every one of your clients and offering them direct contracts at rates that undercut what you charge. Professional is simply refusing to work with someone who demonstrated they can't be trusted. My daughter made a mistake in judgment. Your daughter announced a hostile acquisition. You backed her. You brought lawyers and documentation. That's not a mistake. That's a coordinated business decision that backfired. We're family. I corrected. Past tense. I filed separation papers 3 days ago. Your daughter was served this morning. The color drained from his face. You're divorcing her over this? I'm divorcing her because she spent 5 years married to someone she never bothered to know. The business situation just clarified what was already true. She's devastated. She's embarrassed. There's a difference. Devastated is what you feel when you lose something you valued. Embarrassed is what you feel when something you dismissed turns out to matter. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. You know what kills me? I almost respected you for this. The way you played it. The federal angle, the direct contracts, even refusing to negotiate. It was smart. Cold, but smart. Almost respected me. Until I realized you're burning everything down just to prove you could. I'm not burning anything, I said. I'm standing in the building I built, running the company I created, maintaining contracts I earned. You're the one watching things burn because you can't control them anymore. That's not my fire. That's yours. He left without another word. I sat there for a while after he was gone, listening to the quiet hum of the servers. My phone buzzed with a message from my attorney. The separation papers had been filed. She'd signed them without contesting anything. No requests for mediation, no attempts to negotiate terms. Just her signature and a note that said, I hope you find what you're looking for. I didn't respond. What I was looking for wasn't complicated. Respect. Recognition. The basic acknowledgement that what I built mattered and that I was capable of building it. I had that now. From Meridian. From Agent Blanchard. From the Federal Review Board that had approved Project Nightingale ahead of schedule because the work was solid and the documentation was flawless. I didn't need it from her. Not anymore. The next morning, Juliet Spencer called with news that 2 other firms had reached out about direct security contracts. Word was spreading, not through the Bernard Group's network, but through the professional channels where people cared more about results than pedigree. You're going to need to hire help, she said. This is more work than one person can handle. I know. Good. Because I might know someone. Former colleague of mine, got tired of corporate politics. Smart, competent, doesn't care where you went to school. Send me their information. After the call ended, I walked through my office. The industrial building that she'd always said was depressing. The concrete floors and exposed pipes and windows that looked out on a neighborhood that didn't make the city's tourism brochures. It was perfect. It was mine. And starting tomorrow, it was going to get bigger. Not because someone gave me permission. Because I built something people needed and did it well enough that they came looking for it. That was the only approval I'd ever needed. 3 months later, the industrial building looked different. Not because I'd changed much about it, but because I'd stopped seeing it through her eyes. The exposed pipes were part of the aesthetic now. The concrete floors made sense for the server equipment. The windows that overlooked the rail yard showed me something genuine instead of something curated for appearance. I'd hired 2 people. Both brilliant, both more interested in solving problems than collecting titles. We'd signed 4 more direct contracts. Project Nightingale was in full implementation. Revenue was triple what it had been under the Bernard Group arrangement. My lawyer called on a Tuesday afternoon. Divorce is final. She didn't contest anything. Good. That's it. Just good. What else is there to say? The Bernard Group had lost the Meridian contract entirely. Her father was facing questions from his board about due diligence failures. My ex-wife had resigned from the firm 3 weeks ago. I heard she'd taken a position in another city, something smaller, somewhere she could rebuild without her father's shadow. I didn't feel triumphant about any of it. Didn't feel vindictive or satisfied. Just neutral. Like closing a book I'd finished reading. That afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was the wedding photo from our reception, the one that had sat on her desk at the office. No note. Just the photo. I looked at it for a minute. 2 people smiling at a camera, believing they knew each other. Neither one asking the right questions. I put it in a drawer and went back to work. At 6 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. A delegation from a European infrastructure firm, interested in licensing my security protocols for their markets. They'd flown in specifically to meet me, to see the operation, to understand how someone working alone had developed something their teams of engineers couldn't replicate. I showed them the servers, walked them through the code architecture, answered their technical questions without simplifying or apologizing for complexity. Impressive, their lead engineer said. Where did you study? Taught myself. Documentation, trial and error, a lot of late nights. He smiled. The best engineers I know learn the same way. Universities teach theory. The work teaches you everything else. We talked terms. They wanted a 5-year licensing agreement, renewable, with technical support. The numbers they proposed would set me up for the next decade. I told them I'd have an answer by Friday. After they left, I stood in the empty office, listening to the familiar hum of equipment. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard about the European contract. Congratulations. You were right about everything. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. I recognized the number. Deleted the message without responding. Some conversations didn't need continuation. Some chapters closed and stayed closed. I turned off the lights, locked up, and walked to my truck. The 15-year-old one I'd never traded in. The one that ran perfectly because I'd maintained it myself. Tomorrow, I'd review the European proposal. Next week, I'd probably accept it. The week after that, I'd start planning the expansion that would require moving to a bigger facility. But tonight, I just drove home to the apartment above the office that I'd converted into living space. Small, efficient, exactly what I needed. No marble floors. No champagne I couldn't pronounce. No speeches about family legacy or business reputation. Just me, the work I built, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd never needed anyone's permission to matter. That was enough. It had always been enough.